Georgie and Shane, you have had us locked in this room for the last 3 days. So what are some of the major priorities that have come out of the last few days' sessions?
Great question. I've got my phone because I always forget someone's favourite child. You're right, Bronte. Cattle board started Sunday lunchtime. YPC was Monday afternoon. The board met Monday afternoon. Cane board was here Monday morning as well. And then we got everybody in yesterday and finally let them out late. A couple of things, and I'll let Shane talk to it as well. Biosecurity just came up time and time again through the processes. So we've been working through prioritising policies that members, commodity boards, YPC, and regional councils have actually fed up to us. So Dale and his team in policy had given us, it was 42 topics and policy priorities, and we were given that job of prioritising them. But I think biosecurity just kept coming up as a really big one, Shane, and then the market access and social licence. So how we maintain our markets, how we have a social licence to operate in those markets. And then I think a really big one, particular here, was the land use protection and how we support our members to be able to manage their land going forward. Might throw to you for a few.
Thanks, Georgie. Biosecurity kept coming up time and time again. There was 3 or 4 that were at the top of the list. So biosecurity, markets, access to markets, which I think is at the moment driven by a bit of, at the moment, live export, what's going on in WA, that could affect our industry. And Peter Hall assures me that there's about 75,000 head of cattle tied up at that live sheep export that are in danger. So it's something that we need to do. Sort of bench management came up time and time again. Also, workforce. We all are short of staff, and it's going to be a growing issue, especially with the expansions of mines, renewable energy and all that. So it's something that's come up pretty strongly as workforce or access to workforce.
Yeah, so the other 2 priorities that have been identified was sustainability, looking at sustainability from not just an environmental but also a business perspective. And I think about that as being our members being able to have a business that where they manage the landscape and are rewarded for that, they have a profitable business and they're able to support their families and their employees to have a great life as well and be part of what I talk about often, a regional ecosystem, towns that are thriving, business opportunities, great jobs and strong regions. So that sort of wraps up that sustainability piece around both business and environment. And then interestingly, not having been an identified really strong priority the last couple of years, even though we've continued to work on it, was telecommunications. And really about increasing that footprint. How do we use the different technologies of low orbit satellite? How do we work with the different providers that are out there? We were fortunate to have Telstra with us last night and this morning. But actually thinking about all the different ways that we're using that telecommunications to enable the data we're collecting to help us have the influence and have data-driven decision making both within our businesses and around some of the sustainability conversations and the social licence. So that sort of telecommunications had a bit of a strong bent to it in that we're needing it to actually just enable the work and the data that we're wanting from our businesses. So yeah, just a light and easy workload for the next couple of years really for Dale and the team.
Thank you. So you've now got your 7 major priorities. How does AgForce plan on actioning that for its members?
So we went through a fairly vigorous process to start with from commodities and the regional councils to bring those policies that they want actioned to here. We've gone over for the last 3 days and Georgie has had us a lock and key. It's been long, it's been intense, and but it needs to be, because to get your priorities right for the next 2 years, that process needs to go. So an EOI for expressions of interest for those committees to work those priorities will come out shortly. So for members to be involved in that, can be involved, so that if you want to be involved in one of those particular fields on one of those committees, talk to your RMs, your local RMs, talk to your local councils, talk to your commodity that you're involved with, and let people know that you want to be in those committees.
Yeah, and it's one of the most powerful things for me, often when I go to meetings and I've got a briefing paper from the policy team, to be able to sit across from ministers and talk about our 4 commodities, our YPC, and then our cross-cutting committees that have subject matter experts, people who have a long and deep knowledge of the issues that we're facing and the complexity of the environment we're operating in agriculture and for their business, and the depth and the breadth that brings to the discussion. And I really do find there's enormous respect for that when I lay it out and explain that to people. They often don't understand how complex and how many people are involved in developing what we do, and so many volunteers who've got that subject matter expert. So if you're interested in one of those topics, we can find a committee for you.
So there's a lot of abbreviations. The Cattle Board has had this discussion a few times around abbreviations and not knowing what they mean. EI is expression of interest, that will come out via email, and you have regional managers, that's your RMs. So how are these discussions happening across commodity? How are the individual commodities being involved?
Yeah, that's a good question, Bronte, and you will have been involved with the Cattle Board one as well as YPC. So each of the commodity boards actually prioritised their policy issues as well, which came into the mix. But each commodity board and the YPC, and in fact the regional councils too, have their priorities. So everyone does have a really clear work plan for the couple of years ahead. And it enables us to be really effective as an organisation because we get clarity about who's working on what and how we can actually work together, and where are the common interests, even though they might be in different commodities, and the common areas where we need to collaborate. There'll also be issues for regions that are specific to their region, and they get to, get that chance to really focus in on what is their work plan for their region.
Yeah, the process has been pretty robust over the last couple of days, but and it's been long, but I know. I've been here since Sunday lunchtime. But look, in order for those to get noted out, to make sure that they are the correct priorities, we had to go through that process. And if we didn't, we wouldn't have the right priorities up there.
So where can members find communication on what these priorities are, how to get involved? What's the main streams of communication?
Yeah, so the 7 priorities that we've got up will be communicated back to those commodity boards, back to your regional managers, back to the regional councils. So I think there's action will come out on Tuesday, which is so action is actually opened by 2,000 members on a weekly basis. So it'll be in action next Tuesday, and you'll be able to see those 7 priorities. If you want to know about any of those priorities, please talk to us.
Yeah, exactly, and I think the next couple of months will be about that chance to get involved. These work priorities start at the beginning of July, and we have, it has been a slightly different process, but it's been incredibly effective the last couple of days. I really value how much everyone has put into it, because really, I know that we're going to have a really strong work plan for the next 2 years for each of those areas.
So we've talked a lot about the future and where the next 12 months to 2 years is going to go. What are some of the major wins that AgForce has had recently for their members?
So one of the wins that AgForce has had recently is, so there was a report that came out, they wanted to get rid of the fuel excise tax. So AgForce was very active in this area, and it saved you 23 cents per litre. So that was going to be turned on its head. So AgForce managed to get that, and that is a massive win for you guys.
Yeah, so the diesel fuel rebate's a really big one. We worked with AgForce on that, but it took a couple of days. It was from Sunday morning to, I think the PM stood up on Tuesday lunchtime and said it wouldn't happen. To me, that's just the power of really strong advocacy and a really strong state and national voice. I think some of the examples, we talked about biosecurity before. I think the work that Will led, and Will's here, and Mike Pratt was on sheep and wool, but the work they led last year around FMD and LSD was, there were times when we were sort of waiting for someone at a national level to lead it, but we ended up leading it at AgForce because we knew what people needed to know, and Cattle Board really led that incredibly effectively. And more recently, Peter Hall has led the piece around the brands and earmark review, which is ongoing. But again, some really effective opportunities for people to input and have that collaborative conversation and have that impact. There's been some big wins in the environmental space, but we also are facing there an incredibly strong alliance between a federal and a state government who are both environmentally aligned, and so we might talk more about that later on and some of the challenges we face in that area. But I think, if you just pick those couple of things, and the other thing that's probably really pertinent now is every year we have a process around land valuations. So obviously we kicked that off last week when the valuations were released. John Moore is available to members. It's an incredibly useful service where people who have gone through the valuation process this year, some of you may have already been in touch and booked meetings with John, but I know for many members over the last few years since we brought that service in, it's been incredibly useful to support you in seeking a review of your unapproved valuation. So just a few things. There's been a lot happening, and welcome people coming and having a conversation about any of those things.
Yeah, we might just mention also there are a lot of valuations coming up very soon. They're out there now, and also brands. We've been doing a lot of work on the branding, and I think they're going to Brisbane shortly to talk about it again. But AgForce has been doing a lot. We had some very successful webinars earlier in the year to talk about brands.
Well, both Shane and Georgie will be around here this afternoon. Don't let them see the sunlight until it gets dark. Track them down track them down and have a conversation. There are plenty of AgForce delegates here for the afternoon, and enjoy the next speakers.
Thank you.